Hello, and welcome to today's discussion about remote development. I have here with me Sylvester, who is staff software engineer at Slack. And I'm Sorin, VP of engineering at Bunnyshell. Hello, Sylvester.
Hey, Sorin.
Really nice to have you here. There has been a slight change in the format of this webinar. Roxana unfortunately couldn't make it. So I'm filling in. You'll have to do with me, but I hope I get the job done. So,
Thank you, thank you for having me. Yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
actually, me too, because it's a really hot topic these days. Due to the fact that the engineering space, the software space in general, has significantly changed in terms of how code is delivered, shipped, but not much in terms of how it's been created. And by that I mean the boilerplating around the creation of the software, because the actual core has enormously changed, frameworks, patterns, and so on. But how we run and test our code locally before reaching a pre-production server hasn't changed much, unfortunately, since I don't know, like 10 years probably, something like that. Sure, we use containers after we used VMs on local, but apart that, not much. And there are lots of challenges, as Sylvester will also point out, like having limited resources, physical resources to run on laptops, needing to play catch up with local environments due to ever improving software and increasing dependencies, right? Bottlenecks with fixed staging, and not only. There's a bunch of things here. So maybe you can quickly introduce yourself, Sylvester, and then we'll get on with the drilling.
Sure, I'm looking forward to the grilling. Well, my name is Sylvester George. I'm a staff software engineer with Slack, working with developer productivity team. And recently, we worked on switching remote development environments for web app developers in Slack, and it's been a roller coaster of a ride, great experience, and yeah, that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, so great. Let's start with the problem, Sylvester. What were you facing at Slack, which made you look towards an alternate way of using environments?
Sure. So over a period of time, Slack has evolved and grown significantly. And web app being its core application, uh, we had to maintain the smoothness of the development with this growth. Now, through the engineering surveys that we do internally, we realize the pain of engineers uh, of maintaining these code and the dependencies on the laptops, and it caused a lot of impact on their productivity. Let's say some of the issues being, syncing your latest code with master, maintaining latest Docker or HHVM versions, performance issues due to these intensive resources running on the laptop, where your laptop starts sounding like a power generator. And then also debugging issues to specific user laptops is very hard. They could have different configuration and stuff like that. So all these problems led us to think of a solution that not only solves this problem but also provides a consistent and standardized way for Slack engineers to develop. And that's how we kind of started exploring remote development environments and got there.
Okay. Sorry, before we move on, just to have a sense of scale in which the impact of these changes was made. How many engineers has Slack?
So Slack has about 1,200 to 1,300 software engineers, out of which 60% primarily contribute to web app.
Mhm.
And as we currently only support remote dev environments for web app engineers, I would say it would be approximately 750 engineers that leverage remote dev environments. I looked up some recent metrics, and we get about 200 requests on a daily basis for a new development environment.
Okay, okay. So thank you very much. That is quite a lot. It's more than whole organizations may have, and quite large organizations. So, in your journey, did you also consider improvements to the system that you already had, or was it like direct approach towards the cloud?
Oh, definitely. I mean, so Slack recently moved to switch to remote development environments. But over the time, Slack has invested a lot in coming up with different strategies to improve the development experience. And though most of them has worked, they've always been a little bit of, brittle. So like for example, the initial iteration was running everything on your laptops, like Mac OS, things like HHVM, which is used for supporting Hacklang code. And some problems that we faced there was, homebrew updates causing things to break, upgrade failures, and then making sure that engineers are in sync with the right HHVM version. And that became a big pain point because of the frequent HHVM upgrades that we got. So like folks would be in working on different versions and having different issues became a big of a problem. So to kind of resolve those issues, the team came up with a solution to containerize HHVM on local laptops. Now, this way, folks would have this single way of spinning up their container, but then this came with the overhead of writing custom script, building Docker images to support different HHVM versions, and uh, also dependencies like Docker came into picture. So and we saw apparent traffic in our self-serve channels where folks would have trouble, due to an upgrade or some
Mhm.
laptop specific configuration. Um, and that made us realize that we need to do something more to make this experience smoother than having these different disruptions every now and then.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, makes total sense, and it's really useful and really valuable that you do these kind of things like monitor or not necessarily monitor, but keep an eye out for these
Mhm.
kind of things, surveys, and getting the pulse regularly. It's really useful. This seems like, for me, seems like the kind of project which is going to be huge, and also the potential impact is very, very high, but also the committed resources need to be very high. Was it hard to push this through and get support and keep focus on the project once you've started it?
Um, I would actually like to give credit to the developer productivity leadership on that, as they are responsible for conducting these regular surveys with engineers and making decision based on the feedback. So, like developer Spain with local development came back in the survey as one of the primary issues, and which actually led to the inception of developer workspaces team that
Mhm.
was meant to focus on working closely with engineers and learn how they could improve their productivity, when writing code. So with this new team, we got the opportunity to reach out to different engineers within Slack, learn about their experiences, their pains, and work with them in figuring out how we can make their development experience better. So kind of, we had good flexibility and freedom to kind of dig into it, learn as much as we could before we come up with a solution. And also the proposal aspect of this project was quite iterative, as we had a solution. It went through different engineers for their feedback, and then we made changes based on that, and eventually came up with this final prototype solution that we started working on.
Okay, great start. It seems really focused. So how does the system work? Like in a nutshell, how does the
Uh,
system uh, work for engineers?
so we wanted it to be pretty convenient for engineers to start using it, whether they are like regular web app engineers or whether they are occasional engineers who sometimes work on web apps. So Slack has this intense CLI tools, which basically is used for interacting with development environments, creating a PR, updating local dependencies, etc. Um, it gets installed by default to every new Slack engineer as part of their onboarding. So it was an obvious place for us to add Slack remote development interface for developers. So we added a new command to kick off remote environments, which is basically Slack remote dev branch name and the name of the branch that you want to give. Now, this command would let engineers create a new branch that they want to work on, reserve a development environment, attach their branch to that environment, install any required dependencies, and then open a local VS code with required settings and extensions already installed. So it basically even eliminated the need for engineers to clone web app code on their local, which was like quite a bit of an hassle because the code itself takes 30 minutes to clone because it's pretty big. So yeah, it kind of removed pretty much all dependencies from the local.
Yeah, really, really good. However, 30 minutes to clone the code is pretty impressive. Quite a history there, and I imagine the quantity as well is
Mhm.
overwhelming. Okay. Before diving into any more specifics, can you please let us know what was achieved in terms of developer experience? Maybe share
Um,
a couple of numbers or other relevant things.
Sure. So a few things to come top of my mind is like this whole experience of getting a new environment ready to work on would take only 90 seconds. Whether you are new or you've been here long, you get a fresh isolated environment with web app code ready to be changed and worked on within 90 seconds. Um, on top of that, switching to remote development environments resulted in improved performance of many common tasks such as running unit test, running debugger, and installing dependencies. We also observed some of the IFI builds to be about 20% faster on remote environments. This highly impacted the new development, the onboarding exercise for the new joinees, as remote development eliminated much of the prerequisites of web app development, bringing down the setup time from an hour to just mere few minutes.
That's pretty impressive. And yeah, it's pretty impressive. Do
Thank you.
you also keep track of these metrics in on historical manner, like compare them across time periods, or I don't know, milestones, stuff like that?
Oh yeah. We do that from especially from adoption point of view as well. As we started off rolling out a beta version, and we want to see how the adoption rate happened to at what speed it happened and stuff like that. And also we continuously monitor the performance of different aspects that is used within these remote environments. For example, there are a bunch of front end builds that we do, and we have intensive metrics around that. So we make sure we keep a close eye on that in case there are any degradations or any performance impact due to whatever reasons, and we can take kind of necessary actions based on that.
Okay, got it. It seems like a really healthy thing to do,
Mhm.
uh, and the benefits can be seen through these kind of initiatives. I imagine this is not the only one, probably.
Yeah.
Um, a question which I'm very curious about: how did you manage to drive adoption? Because we all know developers have their own way, generally speaking, and there are really strong preferences there.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and one of the hardest part of working on this project, and something that we were like really, really anxious about, because as an engineer or a developer, I know how hard it could be to change ways of something that you've been doing for a year or two. So we knew from the start that the story had to be compelling if it was going to convince people, engineers, to switch to a whole different and new workflow. So we initially decided to go with a beta release where developers could volunteer to try this new workflow. And this allowed us to get enough feedback and make improvements to minimize the friction during the transition from local to remote development. And with that beta version, we got an overwhelming response of for remote development environments, and which made the adoption easy. We got a lot of word of mouth spread from our core group, and folks already started permanently switching to remote events while it was in beta. And that kind of gave us the confidence to kind of release it for general availability within 2 months of beta. And since then, the adoption spiked up. As you can see, the metrics there. Uh, we released beta sometime in August, and by October, we did a general release. We released it for general availability, and from then it just took 2 to 3 months for it to reach to 100% for all backend developers in web app, which was pretty much more than what we anticipated or expected, to be honest.
Yeah, 100% seems like the target to have, like the goal. Um, yeah, it seems really impressive. And I assume this is due to the fact that the tool does what it promises, does the job, right?
Uh, yes, to a great extent it does. Of course, it does not do everything that every single individual or every single engineer expects it to do, but it covers most of the use cases, and we try to add new features as much as we can to kind of to cater to the needs. But yeah, so far it has received great response, and it has definitely shown improving the efficiency of developers to do the job.
Hmm. Yeah, really, really important to have this. Something which came to my mind now regarding the thing you mentioned, facing the fact that it doesn't cover all the features. Basically, this is the issue with any tool, and it's not an issue; it's a given fact, actually.
Mhm.
Uh, do you have some way of tracking the errors encountered by the users, like automatic collection or uh, tracking dumping traces, stuff like that? Or do you rely on individuals to report any circumstances that they had?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we as of now, we have a self-serve channel for this project where folks can report their issues, and based on those issues, we've also come up with a FAQ where folks can look up for frequent issues that they encounter, and they can look that up for solutions. But yeah, we wanna in it's in a scope to dig further into what they do within what engineers do within these remote environments. Like for example, one of the features that we recently added was, we collect the command history on these remote environments, and we store it in in a S3 bucket, and so that every time an engineer gets a new environment, we pull down that command history so that they can refer to the old commands that they have used. So basically, we're trying to make that experience as local as possible. Same way, we're also now storing the state of their workspace every time they make a change. So that, for instance, if an environment is terminated, or they accidentally detach it or terminate it, they can still get back their lost or in progress work on a new environment. So we are getting closer and closer to get more metrics from within these environments. Yeah, something like tracing and logging would be is in our scope to do, to get closer to to get those answers of what they're doing, how much they're using it, what could be missing or what could be added to make this experience better.
Yeah, really interesting. I haven't thought about like storing the bash history somewhere. So since you mentioned this, regarding the adoption question, um, does this experience allow for any customizations? Like I don't know, maybe some developers prefer to use Vim as an editor, or others Nano, the classic, or you get the point. Any
Yeah.
other customizations?
Oh yeah, that was a huge feedback that we got during our beta phase. Like we had a lot of Vim users, we had a lot of Nano users who wanted to kind of have the same experience, and we catered to those needs as much as we could. So, for example, we created a way for folks to add their configuration on their local whatever Vim or Nano and other Bash configurations that they wanted on the remote environment in this local directory that we suggested. And whenever they get a new remote environments, we just sync those configurations to the environment, and making it as similar to the local environment as much as possible. And that kind of actually we saw a great adaptation after that, because they didn't have to kind of, for example, a lot of people are used to aliases, right? And they were like missing that in the remote environments. With this new feature, they were able to get that on the remote environment without doing anything additional. So that was a great win for us to kind of stretch the adoption level at that moment.
It's really good stuff here. Um, yeah, like it really does sound like local development from what you say. Would be curious to try it out, to be honest. Maybe someday. Okay, so you've talked about user feedback, these kind of things that were requested by developers, basically. How about the future? What plans do you have for improving the system even more?
Um, yeah, so we are currently working on a lot of different aspects here. So, for example, we had a summer intern and who worked on this project for creating a VS Code extension, which would have a UI interface to kind of managing these remote environments for users, where you can see the list of environments that you have. You know, they have linked to the health metrics for those environments, and other useful links that folks can jump into. For example, if there are any performance issues and they want to kind of map it with what processes they're running, they could do that. They could even request a new environment or detach one using that UI interface. So we worked on that from the client perspective for the ease of usage perspective. And then the biggest thing that we rely and now we got was a lot of projects apart from web app. Owners have requested us to get the same remote development experience. So we are currently exploring other options or kind of extending the remote dev workflow for other projects within Slack, not only web app. So yeah, so it's exciting to kind of explore that to make it more of a generic solution than being specific to be specific to a particular project.
Cool. You don't have to sell that to us. We're all about developer experience, and it is really exciting to being able to discuss this with a company which did it on their own, tailored
Mhm.
to their needs. So I had one more question regarding a UI, but you kind of answered it based on a visual VS Code
Mhm.
extension. And since we're talking about VS Code, is it the only current supported IDE for spinning up remote environments?
Yes, as of now, it is. And the reason being is we wanted as a team to achieve a stable state with a single IDE before we began exploring support for other IDEs if possible. And also, since web app uses Hacklang uh, as a code and which internally uses HHVM, VS Code is probably the only IDE that has an extension for Hack.
Mhm.
So that became by default became the ideal IDE for supporting web app development. But as we wanna start exploring, other projects and that are in different languages, we might also explore supporting different IDEs to some extent, which are like best suited for those languages.
Okay, so I was really curious on how you got software engineers to change their IDs, but I find out that you basically had it easy because
Mhm.
there wasn't much of a choice there.
Oh,
Yeah.
so just to add context, the majority of web app engineers used VS Code for their work already.
Mhm.
So that wasn't a hard part for us. Though for some front end developers who use primary code on TypeScript and JavaScript, we
Mhm.
got few requests to support different IDEs. But yeah,
Okay.
we had to deprioritize it at the time because of to achieve the stability and kind of have this adoption happen. But yeah, we might soon look into it so that we can add more people to come in and work use remote environments.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't that easy. It was easier than I'd expected, but not quite that easy. Good to know. So you talked about some gains already, some things that you got out of this process.
Uh-huh.
Usually, when you come up with a project like this, you come up with a hypothesis, right? So you get to the table and say like, we want to do this because we're expecting this and that, right? Were
Mhm.
there any things that you didn't expect, like out of the blue, seemingly out of the blue, wins for this?
Uh, I think there are two that comes top of my mind. One is so we got this feedback from one of the engineers, which was super interesting, who mentioned that you know uh, they could work longer on their laptops with remote environments without recharging it because we did not run any resource intensive resources like HHVM Docker anymore. So the battery would last longer. So like for example, if somebody's on the move and like just working, they didn't have to worry about getting their laptops charged anytime soon. and still continue working, which was pretty cool to learn. We did not consider that aspect at all. And the other part was when we were developing this, we focused on discussing this with you know folks who regularly develop on web app and make changes. So to get as much as useful input as we can. And we did not know in depth about the onboarding process, how
Hmm.
what it entails. Like so, for every new Slack engineer who onboards, they have a small exercise where they have to uh, push in a PR in web app, which goes into production. It's a small change, but yeah, that's a basic practice, part of the onboarding exercise. And this task used to take like an hour, more than an hour, with cloning web app, installing uh, Docker and other dependencies. And with remote events, this all changed to merely 5 minutes because all they had to do was install the CLI, and they would do their work as it is in the exercise without any prerequisites. So, which was a great win for the entire onboarding process. So that was amazing.
Yeah, I imagine. I don't know how it was in Slack prior, but usually the onboarding is very different from company to company, but usually it is a painful process for most developers setting up their environment. This exact part which is solved here. So I can imagine what onboarding now feels much better than it did before. Okay, so now the hard question. How about costs? Because using computing power in the cloud is obviously very good in terms of resources, time spent, battery life, as you've stated. But how about costs?
Yeah, that's a spicy one. So yeah, we certainly saw a spike in cost as the usage of these remote environments increased, and we anticipated that. So, and we had like prior approvals and everything set in place for that. So one of the examples is like when we started supporting front end development in these environments, we realized that we were seeing some performance regressions, and we decided to increase the instance size of these environments, like the CPU and the RAM and stuff. And with thanks to remote environments, it was pretty easy. We just had to make a Terraform configuration change to do that for all our fleets. Um, but and while we did that, it doubled the cost of the development environment. But it was very much justified with the increased efficiency of a team. They could, work on parallel features at the same time without the cost of context switching, which was not possible with local development, as you can imagine, right? So that kind of added great level of productivity for developers, and we got the feedback, and that's how it was justified to the leadership as well. However, that being said, we also have some work in scope where we would like to optimize the usage of these environments in future. That is, adding a lease time or a sleep time so that they can be turned off when they are not being used for a certain amount of time. And behind the scenes, we save users workspace, we save the command history and everything that is needed, so that whenever they're ready to get back to it, they just have to kind of either go to the UI, click a button, or run the CLI command and get to it within 90 seconds without doing anything additional.
Just
So yeah, it's definitely not up was not a priority at that time. The cost, it was more of the efficiency. But
Mhm.
once things are stabilized, it's definitely in a scope to kind of do some cost optimization as well.
Yeah, you actually anticipated two questions that I had come up with, but the reason for which I asked about the costs was to actually see if they were justified. Like put an emphasis on the gains, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
some direct costs on one hand, like the cloud bill increases, but you for sure get something else on the other end, let's say. And I'd expect to be a great increase in developer experience, which in turn boasts retention rates, which saves a lot of money for the company, like not having to recruit, not having
Mm-hmm.
to re-onboard people, not having to lose knowledge from within the team, and so on. And the context switching, which you already mentioned, is a thing that's really understated from my point of view, because having to wait or having to just fill in some gaps
Mm-hmm.
of time with something isn't that productive. And instead of I don't know, hiring an additional maybe 5 or 10% workforce,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're simply just paying a cloud bill and everybody's happier. Because
Happier.
I imagine this to be a difficulty for Slack as well, but for smaller companies, having the budget doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
you can also execute on it. So you could have the budget to hire people, but you cannot find the actual talent. But you can always pay more for servers, right?
So
That,
yep. Uh,
that's scalable if you have the budget.
I I think that's much easier than recruiting new folks, I guess, right?
I can vouch for that. Yeah. Okay. So, do you have anything else to add? I've ran through the list of my questions and I've exhausted them. Anything else that I haven't asked you that it's worth mentioning? I don't know.
But this, so yeah, I mean, I think you covered most of it, and they were like really good questions. Thank you for that. For me, like personally, this has been a really, interesting project to work on, and kind of, I think, hello. Can you hear? All right. I think Sorin is frozen. I'll continue. Yeah. So yeah, this has been a really interesting project and very rewarding from the perspective of um, getting feedback directly from the customers, like who are Slack engineers, and it's been a great experience. And with the success of remote development environments for web app specifically, we have now looking to explore um, this for other projects within Slack, and I'm really excited about that as well.
So, hello again. Sorry about that. It seems like
Hey,
my
Sarah.
decided to restart all of a sudden. Sorry about that. Hope you heard the question. I'm not sure if you already answered it.
I actually did. I just wanted to say, yeah, with the success of remote development environments in web app, we are now exploring, to support other projects within Slack, and which is going to be, even more exciting. So, and it's been great to hear the feedback from actual day-to-day developers or engineers who work on these things, and how it has improved the productivity. So it's been pretty rewarding for our team to work on something like this.
Really good to hear that, and I can totally relate because here at Bunnyshell we also cater to the developer experience, and we have an environment as a service platform which allows you to create environments on demand or automatically. I'm not going to get into too much details in for this right now, but I would like to showcase our own solution for remote development, which is obviously a bit more generic. It's not tailored to one company's needs, but nevertheless, it's been proven to work very well for multiple teams. Maybe you can share some feedback afterwards, Sylvester. So moving on to the demo, Patrick, if you can help me with the screen share. Thank you. So I have here, what is here is the Bunnyshell platform, obviously. I have here a project with two environments. One is temporary staging that I'll be using once in a while, and the other is a demo environment, which I created specifically for this demo. Here we can see the application running. It's just a demo application which we've built using a front end built with React and back end using Node.js and a Postgres database. It allows for book management, very, very basic book management. Let's say I would have something like Slack handbook as an entry in order for it not to be completely empty, right? So I have this application, and as I said, we have the front end, we have the back end, and we have Postgres database. In order to allow remote development on this, you also have to run a CLI command. I'm going to copy the command here. Obviously, I already have the CLI installed, and I have prepared the repo here. It's open. So I'm going to run this command, which essentially tells the CLI to open the remote development, to start it for a given component, which I selected from the UI. I chose the folder, the local folder, to be synced, and it's pre-filled with the current folder in which you're in. What's happening behind the scene is that the Kubernetes pod manifest is synced. So it allows for persistent volume to be created onto which my local code would be synced. And it also allows for an SSH tunnel, which has just been opened. So this is the, I'm basically inside the container here. This is a shell to the container, right? What you can notice now is that I don't have the front-end application anymore up, and that's because the start command for my container was overridden. But the point is that with, in our vision at least, with remote development, you should be running the exact same commands which you're also running on your local environment. And for this application, this command is npm start. So I'm going to run npm start just as I would on my local machine to start the development server, which will basically watch for file changes and re-render the React UI. So it's started. I can see that the application is now up and running again. It's running within the process which I previously started. It's connecting to the same backend, which is untouched. Obviously, I can see the Slack handbook here still. Sorry. And what I will do now is perform a minor change on a list, on a title, sorry, which is very easy to see. Hello from the webinar, right? I'm gonna save the file, and now, as you saw, the files were recompiled. What happened behind the scenes was that the files were synced into that container running in Kubernetes in the cloud, and the React refreshed my my UI. So this is very easy to do. It basically syncs your file, and it's obviously not limited just to interpreted. languages, because even if you have compiled languages, you will still use the same commands you use today for development of your applications, and run those in the container directly. You can open additional SSH tunnels to that container in order to perform some extra tasks that you would like parallel processing. And just to showcase the fact that it's in remote development, in order to prevent maybe confusions, like having an environment being overtaken by somebody in an unexpected manner. We also highlight this in the UI. There's also a protection on remote development, so it cannot be run accidentally on an environment which was not set up to do so. In order to, I don't know, finish the work, let's say you would run almost the exact command, but instead of running the start action, you would run the stop action. And this will basically put back your previous pod definition and cancel out the changes which we've done to the application. Right now, it takes a bit because the dev container also runs npm start with the dev tools, so it takes like 25 seconds to boot. But once it's booted, it's there, and you can use it without remote development, right? So you have whatever image, whatever code you previously had deployed there is also deployed now. This was it in terms of a short demo on our side. Maybe we can take the chance to get some feedback on it, maybe from you, Sylvester, or from anybody else who has an opinion or an experience with these kind of tools. Would it be useful? Would it fit your needs? And most importantly, why wouldn't you see it working? But no need to hijack this right now. We can get the feedback later on in an asynchronous thread.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to discuss more and talk more about it. But yeah, in a nutshell, it seems very similar to you know how we use remote events with add-on kind of flexibilities for sure and more features than we have for us. So yeah, it seems in very much in line with what we've been trying to do for our developers in that domain. So pretty neat.
Great, good, really good to hear that. Maybe we'll discuss more in a detailed session and talk the behind the scenes also. Let's get back on track and have some questions for Sylvester. So how did that impact the dev dependency on DevOps for certain tasks? Do you have any reflections on whether communication was affected amongst different departments or teams?
Uh, uh, Let me see if I got this right. Uh, so one thing good about this was this team, like the workspace team who worked on remote environments, had their own, has its own set of infra, and they own the ops aspect of it as well. Like for example, we use Chef for provisioning instances, and we use Terraform for scaling purposes and things like ASG. And there is a common project within Slack, and folks can add on to their account in AWS and kind of create these recipes and ASGs. So for us, it was pretty isolated as these environments were owned by us. Of course, there were bits and pieces where we had to consult with ops folks with for their expertise in some aspect. For example, one of the biggest aspect was to how we wanna allow engineers to have Git access on these remote environments, and that whole process to enable that went through a security group within Slack, and to come up with a compliant solution that they gave us a go ahead, and that's when we moved forward with it. So yeah, it was a cross team collaboration in that sense, but yeah, the pretty much infra was owned by the team for by our team, so it was pretty easy for us to manage and did not cause any disruption for any other teams.
Okay, thanks for detailing on that one, Sylvester. So we have one more. How do you solve the time zone issues? Are teams built around time zones?
Yes, and that's a really good question, and we have that in a pipeline to do. So there are like we have folks working from Australia or India, in that matter, who kind of see some slowness. A bit of it initially was from the aspect of reserving an environment, and running these setups were taking longer. So easiest solution for that for us was to kind of increase the timeouts to kind of cater to their needs, so that all these operations get done within a given threshold. Um, but yeah, we still have in a pipeline to kind of have these environments in different availability zones, and kind of figure out a way so that they get assigned rightly to based on time zone. So recently, for that we started capturing the availability zones for the user when they request a remote environment, so we know where it's coming from. And the next part, when once we get to it, would be to kind of have these instances reserved based on their location through our database when we do that. So yeah, that's a good question, and it's kind of a good thing to consider, because it will impact folks working on different zones differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
What is
Next
the
step.
next step after remote development? A more visionary question.
My next step was to have a vacation, but yeah, from the work perspective, kidding aside, yeah, it's kind of it's a great place to be, and we can always work on adding new feature and optimize it so that it's like the experience gets better and better. Like I said, we focused on remote development only for a specific project in Slack, that is web app, and now we are focusing on extending it to all projects within Slack. Kind of come up with a generic solution similar to kind of Bunnyshell, what Sorin just demoed. But yeah, we are also continuously adding new features, like saving your remote workspace state. Enabling code collaboration on these remote environments is basically something that we recently added, which allowed multiple people to work on the same branch at once, push their commits, make the changes, review, and stuff like that, which has come along really well for our for our engineers. So yeah, to cut it short, yeah, we want to extend it to all projects within Slack and continuously add features to kind of optimize this workflow.
Thank you. One more. What were the best integrations your team made into the remote development platform you built?
Hmm. Best integrations. Again, let me see if I'm getting this right. I think I already answered that in the previous question. Like features like saving workspaces and having this feature of sharing command history across different environments is it's pretty cool features, and they all focus on making this experience as local as possible, right? So when folks, so one of the things that we uh, advertise is like when you are struggling with the environment, they are machines. They could go bad every now and then. You cannot completely trust them 100%. So the easiest solution we try or we tell them is switch to a new environment just to see if this is happening over and over again or it's just a one-off issue. We want to capitalize on that and make sure when they do that, it's as fast as possible and as smooth as possible so that it kind of becomes their muscle memory that, oh, if they're having an issue, something is bad, oh, let's switch to a new environment and they will be up instantaneously. So we're trying to kind of kind of find a sweet spot to make local and remote environments as similar as possible is by integrating these different features.
Okay. Yeah. So a tough one. How do you manage integrating microservices? We haven't discussed like at all about the architecture of the web app that
Mm-hmm.
you are servicing on. We understood that it stays all on a single instance, on a single machine.
Mm-hmm.
But not sure how this is split further. Are there multiple services, or how does it work? In order to bring more context for this question regarding microservices.
So yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not very well versed with web app as a project. As a how it works
Mhm.
internally, as I'm not a prime contributor to web app. But yeah, web app is a monolith, and these environments have been set up in a way where they kind of run dev a version of Slack using the dev infrastructure. So for example, every one of these reserved environment is basically a Slack application running using a shared dev infrastructure. They have different microservices running as production Slack would run on that infrastructure, and they have means to kind of test those microservices uh, through that. But again, I do not have intense knowledge how that integration works, so might not be able to answer that very well.
Mhm. Okay, great. So if I got this right, we basically have you basically have at Slack built the platform for the web app, which consumes other services which are not currently impacted by this remote development tool, right? So they're kind of separate at the moment.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hope that answers the question. Maybe we can take one or two more, depending on how much time we have left. Okay. Did you also consider using off-the-shelf solutions?
Um, so, so we kind of have a bunch of infrastructure already for these environments where, and it was used for testing and reviewing purposes. Like I said, like
Mhm.
a dev environment was basically a instance of Slack using shared dev infrastructure, and folks used to use it. So our focus was to integrate development environment within this instances. So we focused on adding that feature to these environments. However, we did kind of explore a bit of code spaces during the initial prototype time, and realized that they do not support self-served GitHub Enterprise, which is what web app is on.
Mhm.
So we did not dig it further.
Okay, so no, note to self: support enterprise integrations. great on that. Maybe one more, and then we'll be off. Did you have CPU architecture related issues previously, like M1 and the others? Let's say, like I'm guessing that this refers to I don't know, like library issues in as in dependencies compiled for certain architectures.
Oh, certainly. So even like for example, before remote environments came into existence, M1s were rolling out, and I remember the entire web app infra team figuring out a way how to make local development possible on M1s, and this would how that would entail is like getting bunch of M1s to some of the experts who are web app infra experts, and they make it work on these M1 machines, and then later they will give a go ahead to roll it out to other engineers within Slack. So there would always be these kind of issues, right, when with local development as something changes, how to kind of redo everything and kind of make sure it works with the upgrades. And that's what is the benefit of remote environments, and it kind of takes away that dependency altogether, as everything happens on these, for us it happens on these Ubuntu machines, which are consistent, and there just need to be like one change on this one environment, and we can roll it out for everybody else, even if there are upgrades or OS version changes and stuff like that. So yeah, this kind of got us out of that whole complexity as well.
Sure, I can double down on what you said. We've also experienced this within Bunnyshell when we started to roll out M1s, and it wasn't that fun because we also used Docker at the time locally, and this trio was quite a tough nut to crack. Like from MySQL issues to random library issues. But yeah, remote development really does solve this like once and for all. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Sylvester, I would love to catch up and discuss more on certain topics related to remote development, but not just the whole development experience. Maybe we'll have the chance to sit together in another podcast sometime soon. Thank you very much for joining us and for being able to share that much. I'm sure that it was a real inspiration for some teams out there who struggle with the same concerns.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was really a fun conversation, and I had a good time, discussing about remote development environments, on what we do, and also kind of learn more about Bunnyshell and what they are doing. So super exciting.
Great. Thank you much. Thank you very much again, Sylvester. Have a great day ahead, and thank you all for attending, and all the best.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.